Hey everyone, Reverend Dr. Katie here, and we are back for another video about the book of Revelation. This is the second video, so if you haven't checked out the first one, that might be a really good starting place. You can mix and match, you can jump in at any time, but definitely make sure that you do watch that first video to get a good footwork, to get good grounding on what we're going to be doing. This is the, of course, final chapter of the New Testament, the final book, and it's super confusing. And you know what? It's been confusing for millennia. So if you have felt a little trepidation about this book, you are in really, really good company. So we're going to break all of that down. I also made a video yesterday on the King James Version translation of the Bible, and I give you my recommendation for good English translations. So you might want to check that out as well, especially if you want to read along in the book of Revelation and not have to speak Elizabethan English, or you can kind of have them side by side if that works for you. So today, what I want to invite us to do is to again set aside any anxiety, set aside any fear, just for the time being around this book, because what we want to do today is to take the 10,000 foot view of the book of Revelation. We don't want to be right there on the page, because when we do, what emerges, all the fear emerges, all of the anxiety emerges, all of the like, well, what if this is really talking about this, that, or the other? And we start trying to jump to conclusions and jump to interpretations before we're actually ready. Those of you who have done any kind of studies with me before know that my philosophy around biblical interpretation is that we don't ask, what does it mean right off the bat? Because we are not yet equipped to answer that question. We have to go through kind of a process of living and wrestling with the text, wrestling with the scripture, before we get to decide what it means. So the very first thing we ask is, what does this mean? We're always going to come to a short-sighted conclusion. So today is about the 10,000 foot view. So let's start with that. First of all, let's start with the name of the book. This is the book of Revelation. No S. It's not many revelations, it's just one revelation. So if you take away nothing else from this video series except that, then that's actually really awesome. This is a revelation, not many of them. Now that you know this, you're going to see it done wrong all over the place. TV shows get it wrong. The news gets it wrong. Printed books that have editors get it wrong all of the time. It drives me crazy. So I'm always on a Revelation watch because people get it wrong more than they get it right. So it's just one revelation, and it's a revelation told by someone named John of Patmos. One of you asked, is this the same John that's the Apostle John? Most likely not. The book of Revelation is most likely written actually around the year 100, so about 70 years after the crucifixion. So it'd be unlikely that this would be the disciple that was one of the 12 disciples, and more likely it's just someone else who is named John, which would have been a really popular Jewish name in the ancient world. And he's writing from the island of Patmos, which is in the Aegean Sea. Okay, so between Greece and Turkey. So what is this book? So now that you know the name, let's talk about what the book actually is. So the word revelation in English is a translation of the Greek word apocalypsis, which is where we get the word apocalypse. So some Bibles will see it called the Apocalypse of John, some will call it Revelation or the Revelation of John, but it's one revelation written in the form of an apocalypse. So now let's break that down further. What in the world is an apocalypse? Well, an apocalypse is a very particular style and genre of writing that was used by some Jewish groups in the ancient world. The book of Revelation is not the only apocalypse, it's one among many. It's the only full apocalypse that we have in the New Testament. We have other kind of mini little apocalyptic writings, like the 13th chapter of the Gospel of Mark. We call it like the little apocalypse, the mini apocalypse. Half of the book of Daniel is an apocalypse. We have other apocalypses, and then we have a ton of apocalypses that just don't make it into the Bible that are Jewish writings of the time. And so I've read many, many of those. There's a lot of them. And so what does an apocalypse do? An apocalypse is a dramatic story that is about the end times. So it's kind of looking to an imagined future. And apocalypses are generally written by people who are experiencing extreme oppression and repression, especially by their governments. So if you are a minority, and so we're talking about Jewish people who were minority of a minority of a minority, especially in the Roman Empire and a little bit before the Roman Empire as well. And they don't have a whole lot of power within the empire system that they're now a part of. So they're trying to maintain their Jewish identity, they're trying to maintain their own religious practices, and also participate kind of in the empire of the day, which was really, really hard. And some of their practices weren't necessarily respected by the empire. And there were really high taxes. There was like things like crucifixions. We know that as Christians in the person of Jesus, but Jesus is not the only one. So there's a lot of kind of punitive responses to any kind of people that aren't citizens in the ancient empire, or anyone that presses on the empire. So these are people writing apocalypses are people who are experiencing a lot of oppression. Well, when you want to write something that will motivate your people, your tribe, your group, to persevere, to make it through, to get through to the other side, to survive what you are experiencing. How do you do that? Do you write a political treatise that spells out exactly what you want people to do? No, because someone from the empire is going to get a hold of that and say, yeah, I see what you are up to, and you're in trouble now. So what you do is you write it in a kind of code that only makes sense to you and your people. And that's what apocalypses are. So they are very much written in a kind of code, coded language. And what they often do is use terms from the distant past that insiders know that no one else would actually know because they're not part of the culture, they're not part of the community. So for instance, in the book of Revelation, they use the term or the country or the empire Babylon. Well, the Babylon Empire hadn't been around for hundreds of years by the time the book of Revelation was written. So Babylon is code for Rome. It's code for the Roman Empire. So when we look at apocalypses in this way, one of the things that we can see is that they are providing hope for a people who are experiencing extreme oppression, partly by saying, hey, look, at the end of time, there's going to be justice. At the end of time, God will persevere and you will be upheld. At the end of time, in a very far distant future, or maybe a not so distant future, you will be the ones who will be not oppressed anymore. And so apocalypses use kind of fantastical language to get that point across. And they use this very dramatic imagery in order to give hope to people that they're not only going to be taken care of here on the earth, they're taken care of in this cosmic way. And so it's using this a very imaginative, very, very particular genre of writing in order to communicate this point. So if you think about it in our time today, we also have kind of different genres of writing that are designed to galvanize people, right? We always see this during election cycles. Like no matter what side of the political aisle you're on, you're going to see particular forms of speech or particular forms of writing that are meant to give people hope, that are meant to galvanize people towards getting to a poll or towards speaking out, right? So we see this all of the time. And the same thing was true in the ancient world. Okay, so that's what an apocalypse is this particular kind of writing that talks about the end times. That's what an apocalypse book does. And then that's also why it was written. So we've covered the name of the book, what an apocalypse is, why it was written. One other thing about apocalypse, about the word apocalypse, like I said, the English translation of this is Revelation, but an apocalypse literally means to pull back the veil. Pull back the veil just a little bit. And so an apocalypse assumes that the spiritual world and our physical world are very close together. And the apocalypse is the opportunity for the person who's telling the story, in this case, John, the seer, John of Patmos, to pull back the veil so it reveals what's happening on a cosmic level that parallels what's happening here on the earth on the 3D level. And so an apocalypse literally removes the veil that separates those worlds so that we can see, kind of see this cosmic vision. Again, 10,000-foot view. In my opinion, apocalypses are not written so that we're supposed to take them literally. They're written as a divine allegory about seeking justice in the world. And the book of Revelation does that in a very unique, special, and motivating way that I am going to talk about in future videos. I think that's it for now. If you have any comments, if you have any questions, let me know. I'm kind of curious how it feels to adopt this 10,000 foot view, just get the lay of the land for right now before we get into a lot of specifics. I think that'll help take away some of the anxiety, some of the fear producing stuff that just naturally comes along with this book. And it has for me too, y'all. You're not alone in this. But when we can peek back behind the curtain, when we can pull back our own veil that has been separating us from truly understanding, and even maybe falling in love with this book and what it was trying to do and what it can still do, then we may have a little more ability to be in relationship with it. Okay, everyone, so I hope that's really helpful. Again, let me know comments, questions, and I will be back soon with another video.